Good evening, I'm Cynthia Ng. This is AWANI Tonight. The 15th Parliament will commence with the meeting of the Dewan Rakyat on December 19th and 20th. In a notice to MPs, Dewan Rakyat Secretary Nizamuddin Bachamaidin said the first item on the agenda will be the election of the Dewan Rakyat Speaker, followed by the swearing-in of the newly elected MPs. Apart from that, also included in the order will be the election of Deputy Dewan Rakyat Speakers. The motion of confidence on the Prime Minister is listed as the 8th item on the meeting order. Following his swearing-in as Prime Minister on November 24th, Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim proposed a vote of confidence during the Dewan Rakyat meeting to prove his legitimacy as the country's 10th Prime Minister. This is despite earlier comments by Bukit Gelugor MP Ram Kapal Singh, who deemed it was unnecessary, arguing that the constitution does not require a government with a clear majority to demonstrate its legitimacy in Parliament. Negeri Sembilan Pakatan Harapan is open to working with Barisan Nasional for the state election next year, says its chief Datuk Sri Aminuddin Harun. However, he says a decision from Pakatan's top leadership is still pending. Pakatan Harapan currently holds 20 of the 36 state assembly seats, while the rest are under Barisan Nasional. Negeri Sembilan had decided against dissolving its state assembly simultaneously with the dissolution of parliament in October. The state assembly term will expire by mid-next year. On Wednesday, Selangor Pakatan Harapan chairman Datuk Sri Amiruddin Syari said the coalition was ready to form an alliance with Barisan Nasional ahead of the Selangor state elections. He added that Pakatan Harapan was open to having discussions to maintain the relationship it had with Barisan Nasional at the federal level. A week since Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim was sworn in as Prime Minister, the country is waiting with anticipation on the cabinet lineup of a coalition government. Anwar faces some tough decisions in considering demands from over 10 parties, while at the same time scaling down the number of ministries. Who will be Deputy Prime Minister, and should the Finance Minister be another technocrat? On Consider This, we ask political economist Dr. Terence Gomez about the challenges ahead. Malaysian social media saw a rise in racial rhetoric following the 15 general elections, including videos calling for a repeat of the May 13 riots on TikTok. Daniel Teo, a Chevening scholar in political communication, gives his take on tackling hate speech.
It starts with us trying to understand what does freedom of speech really mean. I think for too long we have been rather lazy in trotting out that phrase freedom of speech as a solution to a problem or as a way to shut down any argument. If something that we agree or disagree with, we just say, oh, his freedom of speech. What it really means is we don't really care about engaging that person in that discussion and all that. So with the precondition of free speech, I also think that it is time for us as a society to learn that freedom of speech does not include freedom to incite.
Right.
Does not include freedom to call for violence against people because of their racial or religious identities. And for that, in that sense, hashtag unpopular opinion, I actually think that getting the authorities to act on them is the right way forward, because we don't have, of course, in the long term we can include education and programs and all that, but in the short term we must be able to see for ourselves and sometimes even feel it, the consequences of abusing that freedom.
Media literacy is crucial in navigating the digital space, but independent scholar Farhan Shahmi Abdullah adds that it is time for Malaysia to review its existing policies.
It is important to start from the individuals themselves, but where police and the law is involved, I would actually like to suggest that, seeing that we are going to have a new government, I would suggest a reframing of the entire discussion on freedom of expression to how we can control the segment of hate speech. Because insofar, of course, while we do have the Communications and Multimedia Act of 1998, it is by time that it is updated to reflect what's going on now. And I would very much suggest the inclusion on what separates freedom of expression and what separates hate speech. In having that discussion being put out by the government, by a multi-stakeholder discussion, there are a few already good established ways in the international community where this could happen. Like, for example, the Rabat Action Plan and Article 19's framework on hate speech. Those are pretty good baselines to direct the discussion into, of course, hate speech must be criminalized, but it should also be specific, fair and transparent.
Catch the full conversation on It's About Youth, airing on Astro AWANI every Friday at 10:30 p.m.
Malaysia recorded a 70% drop in the number of new HIV infections over the last 20 years. However, the Health Deputy Director General, Dr. Nurhayati Rusli, says the country is still far from eliminating AIDS as a public health issue by 2030.
This is despite the decline in HIV cases and the increase in treatment coverage. She said the antiretroviral treatment for people living with HIV had increased to 66% last year compared to 28% in 2015. Nurhayati emphasized how inequalities remained a huge obstacle as she calls for HIV treatment, testing and prevention to be improved. Meanwhile, Malaysian AIDS Council Deputy President Dr. Dinesh Mahalingam also highlighted a worrying 80% increase in the number of HIV transmission among youths aged between 13 and 39 through sexual intercourse. An investment of at least 12 million ringgit per year through the existing domestic funding mechanism, he said, would be able to provide long-term results in eliminating HIV.
We will go for a quick break. Stay tuned for more.
Perjuangan untuk Piala Dunia bermula. Saksikan kesemua 64 perlawanan secara langsung dalam 4K HDR dan on the go. Segalanya di sini. Piala Dunia FIFA Qatar 2022. Hanya di Astro.
Layan aksi bola sepak di mana jua dengan telefon pintar baharu percuma dan 40 GB internet lancar di jualan peranti 5G Maxis.
China has begun easing some of its COVID-19 restrictions after anger over its strict zero-COVID approach triggered protests across the country. Authorities are also seen to be softening their tone on the severity of the virus, with Vice Premier Sun Chunlan acknowledging that the Omicron variant is more transmissible but less deadly. Sun, who also oversees COVID efforts in the country, urged further optimization of testing, treatment and quarantine policies. It is the first time a senior official has acknowledged the change in the nature of the virus, a contrast from earlier messages from Chinese authorities warning about the deadliness of COVID-19. Despite near record number of cases, several cities in China were seen lifting district lockdowns. In Guangzhou, where mass protests took place over the weekend, temporary lockdowns were lifted, with one district reopening restaurants and resuming physical classes in schools. Meanwhile, the southwestern city of Chongqing will allow close contacts to quarantine at home if they meet certain conditions. And Zhengzhou in central China announced the resumption of businesses, including supermarkets, gymnasiums and restaurants. Chinese newspapers and websites turned black and white as China mourned the death of former leader Jiang Zemin. State media say Jiang had died of leukemia and multiple organ failure in Shanghai on Wednesday at the age of 96 after all medical treatments failed. Funeral preparations had begun, but a date has yet to be set.
The former president, one of China's most influential leaders, spearheaded the country's growth into a global powerhouse. He oversaw China's accession to the World Trade Organization in 2001, cultivated warm ties with the United States, and presided over Hong Kong's return to Beijing's rule. Following the announcement of his death, flags at government buildings in China and worldwide were lowered to half-mast until after the funeral. President Xi Jinping will lead a 688-member official committee in charge of his funeral arrangements.
Spain has stepped up security at public and diplomat buildings after a spate of letter bombs were sent to targets, including Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez and the Ukrainian embassy. Its Interior Ministry said that an envelope with pyrotechnic material addressed to Sanchez was received on November 24th and disarmed by his security team. The device was similar to subsequent packages received by the Ukrainian embassy and a Spanish weapons manufacturer on Wednesday. The first letter bomb was received and opened by a security officer at the Ukrainian embassy and exploded, causing minor injuries. Security forces found a third suspected explosive device in an envelope mailed to an European Union satellite center outside Madrid. Spain's High Court, which specializes in terrorism offenses, has opened a probe into the attack. A dozen of Indonesian families whose relatives died or injured after consuming tainted cough syrups have sued the government and companies accused of supplying the products. Since August, at least 199 deaths, mostly children, have been linked to acute kidney injury, prompting authorities to ban some liquid medicine sales.
The class action lawsuit targets the Health Ministry, the country's Food and Drug Agency, and 7 companies implicated in selling the tainted medicine. Police have launched an investigation into at least 3 companies that had their licenses to produce syrup medicines temporarily frozen. Similar incidences happened in the Gambia in October, where 70 children died, suspected to have been caused by imported syrup medicines. The World Health Organization's investigation found an unacceptable amount of diethylene glycol and ethylene glycol in 4 Indian-made cough syrups usually found in antifreeze products used in refrigerators and air conditioners and are not safe for use in medicines.
Billionaire Elon Musk says his brain implant company Neuralink is ready to test computer chips in human brains within 6 months. The company is developing brain chip interfaces that it says could enable disabled patients to move and communicate again. In a presentation, Musk said Neuralink had submitted paperwork to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration to seek permission to begin clinical trials in people.
Obviously, we want to be extremely careful and certain that it will work well before putting a device in a human. But we've submitted, I think, most of our paperwork to the FDA, and we think probably in about 6 months we should be able to have our first Neuralink in a human.
Neuralink has in recent years been conducting tests on animals. Its last public presentation more than a year ago involved a monkey with a brain chip that played a computer game by thinking alone. Musk, who also runs Tesla, SpaceX and Twitter, wants to develop a chip that would allow the brain to control complex electronic devices and eventually allow people with paralysis to regain motor functions. That is all we have for you on AWANI tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Cynthia Ng. Good night.
What's the latest?